Hi there, I'm Jason Ross with LaRouche PAC, and I am very happy to be speaking today with Ray McGovern, a multi-decade veteran of the CIA, co-founder of VIPS, the Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, and we're going to be talking about Russia, Trump, Putin, and the direction of the U.S. government. So first off, as setting the stage, ever since Trump was elected, and especially since his inauguration, there's been a growing chorus of claims about Vladimir Putin putting Trump in office by directing the election, and of even directing Trump's policy, that in effect, Vladimir Putin is running the United States government. So first off, is this true?
Well, if it is, then I don't know anything about Russia or the Soviet Union. I was counting up the years that I've been immersed in Russian studies. It goes back 59 years when I decided to major in Russian, got my graduate degree in Russian, taught Russian, was the head of the Soviet foreign policy branch at CIA, briefed President son Gorbachev. I like to think I learned something about how Russian leaders look at the world. Now, when I heard this meme going around that Vladimir Putin clearly preferred Donald Trump, my notion was, well, here's Vladimir Putin sitting with his advisors, and he's saying, that Trump fellow, he's not only unpredictable, but he's proud of it. He brags about it, and he lashes out strongly at every slight, whether it's real or imagined. This is just the guy I want to have on his finger on the nuclear codes across the ocean. It boggles the mind that Vladimir Putin would have had any preference for Donald Trump. Okay, that's aside from the fact that everyone, and that would include Vladimir Putin unless he's clairvoyant, knew that Hillary was going to win. Okay, so just to pursue this thing very briefly, if the major premise is that Vladimir Putin and the terrible Russians, they wanted Trump to win, then you have a syllogism. Therefore, they tried to help him. Therefore, they did all kinds of. But if you don't accept that major premise, the whole syllogism falls apart. And I don't accept that major premise. I think that, well, Putin said himself, I don't have any preference. And I didn't have any preference. I happened to be in Germany during the election, in Berlin. It was exciting because everybody, the German anchors didn't know what to say, didn't know what to make of it. And my German friends were saying, we have a German expression here, the choice between Trump and Hillary Clinton is eine Wahl zwischen Pest und Cholera. Okay, now that means it's a choice between plague and cholera. So I said, I kind of agree. That's why I not only voted for Jill Stein, but was proud to. On the environment, on all the major issues, she had it right. The others did not. So that's the way I looked at it. I kind of think that's probably the way Putin looked at it. And when he said, I don't have any preference, I think he probably meant that he didn't have any preference. So that syllogism falls down, Now, just pursue that one little bit here. Everyone expected Hillary to win. Everyone.
Right.
And we're talking summer, we're talking fall, as Trump disgraced himself in one manner or another. Could never win, right? And nobody thought that Hillary was such a flawed candidate that nobody trusted her, that she might lose. So, again, I'm Vladimir Putin here, and I'm saying, well, it looks like Hillary's going to win. It looks, pretty sure she's going to win. So why don't I hack into her mechanism there in the Democratic National Committee, and if I get caught, well, she may be angry with me, but, what's to lose? I don't think so, Putin is a very cautious fellow. And if he thought Hillary's going to win, like the rest of us did, the last thing he would want to do is hack into their DNC apparatus and be caught, because it would likely be caught, and have an additional grievance for Hillary to advertise against him. So it falls down on logic alone. Now, luckily, you mentioned Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. We are the beneficiary of a membership whose expertise in intelligence matters just won't quit. This includes 4 former high officials in the National Security Agency, retired, one of whom devised all these collection systems that NSA is still using. His name is Bill Binney. Now, he and I are very close. He writes for us, and he helps me write things. And what he has said from the outset, and this is 5 months ago, okay, that this could not be a hack. It had to be a leak. And for your listeners or your viewers, a hack goes over the network.
You're speaking of the DNC?
Yeah, I'm talking
materials?
about hacking the Russians. Good, thanks for interrupting. The Russians are accused, of course, of hacking into the Democratic National Committee emails, and they're also accused of surfacing the Podesta emails. Okay. Now, Bill says, look, I know this network. I created pretty much the bones of it. And I'm free to talk about it. Why? Well, here are the slides that Ed Snowden brought out, okay? Here are the trace points, the trace mechanism, and there are hundreds in the network. And so everything that goes across the network, Ray, I know this is hard for you to believe, and you're looking at me real strange, but everything, you know where it starts, and you know where it ends up. Everything. So if this was a hack, NSA would know about it. NSA does not know about it. As a matter of fact, when the CIA and the FBI said we have high confidence, that the Russians did this, NSA, which is the only real agency that has the capability to trace these things, so we only have moderate confidence. Okay. Now in the Army we call that the swag factor. It's a scientific wild ass guess. Okay. So NSA doesn't have the information. Now, if they had the information, I'm pretty sure they would release it, because this is not rocket science. Everybody knows how these things work, particularly since Ed Snowden revealed the whole kit and caboodle.
Right.
So that's on the technical side. Now, we also know that with respect to the computers at the DNC, for some reason, they jealously guarded them. And when the FBI said, well, you want us to investigate this? Well, hello, we got to get in and see your computers for what they call the forensics, right? Oh, no. The DNC, for whatever reason, said, no, we have our own company called CrowdStrike. They're really good, and among companies, they're the most, and they'll do it. So the FBI never had direct access to the machinery, to the computers, okay? And James Comey, 10 days ago, when he had to talk about this at the House Intelligence Committee hearing, it was so painful to watch him. He said, "Oh, we never really did get access to those computers. No, we had to depend on the forensics of CrowdStrike." Now, granted, it's better to have direct access to the forensics, but that's all we could do. Now,
I guess that didn't stop them from having high confidence, though, huh?
Well, no, high confidence. That's the thing. Jason, the intelligence community, and particularly the FBI and the CIA, had been so politicized that when Obama and John Brennan, his sidekick, the head of the CIA, said, we have to do this, we have to blacken Trump before the election, we have to even try to see if we can subvert enough electoral college members so that they won't vote for him, and then after he was confirmed as president, they're still working against him. So going back to what we know, when was the first leak? Well, the first big leak, and that was the emails of the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton. That was 2 days before the Democratic National Convention in July. Wow. This was a big shock. Bernie Sanders had just kind of caved in, but they still had to explain this. I mean, the content of these emails, and maybe your audience doesn't know this, showed pure and simple that Hillary Clinton and Wasserman Schultz and the top 5 people from the National Committee, the Democratic National Committee, who who quit immediately. That tells you something, right?
Right, once the emails came out, yeah.
They orchestrated the primary campaign and other deals to cheat. I mean, there's no way around it.
Yeah.
To cheat Bernie Sanders out of the nomination. That's clear from the content.
Yeah.
So what did they do? I wasn't a fly on the wall, but I can see Hillary gathering her council of war here, and she's on, well, we can do about this. And when fellows, I know what we could do. I got a good idea. Well, blame it on the Russians. Somebody else said, well, but it wasn't the Russians. It was WikiLeaks. Somebody else said, well, that's a twofer. We hate them with equal hatred. We'll say that WikiLeaks are working for the Russians. Okay, that was 2 days before the convention. Somebody else says, well, what would the rationale be? Come on, the Russians clearly want Trump to win. This is, and how about the major media? The major media really wanted Hillary to win. You got it, man. We got the major media in on this. We got it really wired. And if you watch the coverage, since the WikiLeaks leak 2 days before the Democratic National Convention, and for the weeks after, it was all about not the content. Did Hillary steal this nomination? No. Nobody knew about the guy. It was all about who did it. It was the Russians. How'd the Russians do it? Was it Wiki? How'd they get the Wiki? Okay.
Who's behind this assault on democracy, of revealing this assault on democracy?
Yeah, I mean, you could sort of say it was an assault, but those are documents.
Yeah.
I'm an intelligence analyst, right? And so this is the kind of evidence that we lust after. I mean, documentary evidence from a source whose authenticity has never been seriously questioned. I mean, when people say, well, what's WikiLeaks' take on this? I said, wrong question.
Right.
Don't have a take. You put out the documents. And that's what's good about being an analyst. We can analyze the documents. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out what happened. So that was kind of the way that thing went down. And then as the anti-Russian campaign proceeded, it got worse and worse, to include when Trump won, and there had to be a way to. Now, Hillary Clinton could not have lost just because she was terribly bad candidate. Had to be something else. Had to be the Russians. And part two, of course, and of even more importance, there are a lot of people who make a lot of money on tension in the world, on arms sales, and peace is not good for business. Peace is very bad for business, right? And so if you can stoke up tensions with Russia, if you can make believe Russia's going to attack the Baltic countries, give me a break. Have you been in the Baltic countries? I have. I don't know whether they would attack the Baltic countries. So all this is very artificially stoked up. So you have a major threat. If you have a president who comes in and says, I think a decent relationship with the Russians would be better than what we have now. Whoa! Now, it's hard to argue against that, but they do.
Right.
And the way they do it is say, well, look, you owe your position as President of the United States to those same Russians.
Exactly.
So that's how bad it is. And lately, we've gotten really interesting things happening. Well, let me just finish this part off by saying that with respect to Russian hacking being responsible for the DNC leaks and the Podesta leaks, there isn't any evidence of that. And let me be clear. Do the Russians hack? Of course they hack. Everybody hacks. The Chinese hacked 4 million records out of the Office of Personnel. They've got my retirement records, my health record, everything, all right? So everybody hacks. The question is, did Julian Assange get all this information by himself? And he showed himself pretty capable of doing that, right? Okay. Did somebody put a little thumb drive into the machines in the Democratic National Committee? Somebody who maybe have seen the emails and say, my God, here I'm a bright, bushy-tailed young Democrat. And I said, man, somebody's got to know about how Hillary stole this nomination and downloaded and somehow got it to WikiLeaks. Well, it's not on a network, so it had to be, technically speaking, and I'm speaking out of the experience of the NSA folks, it it had to be a leak and not a hack. The other thing is, and this is of rather good consequence, the President of the United States, outgoing Barack Obama, got up at a press conference on the 18th of January, and addressing this problem, he said, "Now, I just want you to know," and this is a quote, okay, "the conclusions of the intelligence community with respect to how the Russian hacks got to WikiLeaks, those conclusions are inconclusive." His word. So, what does that say? That says that the U.S. government doesn't know how this assumed Russian hacking got to WikiLeaks. Well, you know, I would think that's a big gaping gap or hole. If you can't prove that this so-called Russian hacking, which you can't really prove demonstrably, how it got to WikiLeaks, you know, you're really stretching credulity to aim that to say, as some of the Democrats are saying now in these intelligence committees, "Oh, we know, it's flat fact that it was the Russians." Now, the last thing I'll say on this, because it's relevant, CrowdStrike, the company hired by the DNC to look into the forensics of all this. Now, I was trying to get some expert answers to why the DNC would not want CrowdStrike to step aside and let the FBI, I mean, the FBI is not, you know, infallible, but one thinks it has greater capabilities than anything like, why
Right.
they wouldn't let him. And some of the folks from NSA were telling me, well, Ray, there were probably about 100 hacks into the DNC. They may Russians, if the Russians didn't try to get into that vulnerable system, they should be fired. You know, their intelligence. So there are probably 100 hacks, and it'd be a little embarrassing for the DNC to have to admit that, you know, they were not only the Russians, or we can't even prove the right. So that was one thing. The other thing is this came out today. The latest release from this Vault 7 tranche of documents that WikiLeaks has. They pointed out that the CIA, in its own cyber division created by John Brennan under Obama, has the tools that are necessary to obfuscate the origin of a hack. Obfuscate is the word used in these documents. Again, people say, well, you believe Julian Assange? I said, no, I don't believe anybody. I believe documents. Have you seen Julian Assange massage or adulterate documents? No, I haven't. So here they are. And they show that the CIA developed this capability, not only to obfuscate, but also to make it very much appear that this or that hack was Chinese, Russian. There are 5 languages: Chinese, Russian, Arabic, Farsi, and Korean. That's interesting, isn't it? So they had this capability, and it was demonstrated in what year? The year was 2016. We know that from the CIA documents.
Right.
Okay, now what does that mean? That means that the CIA was doing this stuff, which is really the preserve of the NSA. I mean, they're the technical people. They have billions of dollars more than the CIA in their budget. And so what happened? Well, I have this from my colleagues from NSA who used to work there. They said, Ray, what clearly happened was the NSA had been working on this kind of technology for 15 years, okay? We know what the technology involves. It involves 700 million lines of code. Now, just to give you an example, one line of code costs $25. Do the math, okay? Now, 15 years, this kind of capability, and they can do it. Now, what is an outfit like CrowdStrike up against that capable of doing, okay? So I said, well, why CIA? Why didn't NSA do this? He said, Ray, you know that the CIA is willing and able to run more risks than the NSA. NSA is happy to have them take the blame if this hits the fan. And so that's how this went down. So CrowdStrike, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. Now, maybe they really tried. But what I don't give the benefit of the doubt to is the FBI. Now, James Comey could have got access to those machines. I mean, they get access to just about everything else. He should have insisted, look, we want the forensics ourselves, right? Now, even then, my NSA colleagues tell me, it would have been very difficult for the FBI to figure out how these hacks were disguised as hacks from Russia, unless they went to NSA and said, take in your then you would have NSA monitoring the same systems that they let the CIA borrow to do this stuff. So you got the whole thing convoluted like that. So what's happening now is that people are becoming aware of these things, and this has applications not only for the hacking versus the leaking paradigm, but also this charge that Trump didn't know what he's talking about when he said he was wiretapped by the previous administration. That is, in and of itself, an interesting story. I'd like to pursue that if you have time.
Well, the CIA, Vault 7, the release from WikiLeaks, they had said that the CIA had tools to hide their own authorship of these cyber weapons, and also not only to attribute them to these other state actors, but make it look as though those state actors had themselves tried to hide their own involvement.
Right.
So that somebody trying to reverse engineer a hack would say, it was the Russians, and they tried to hide it.
Yeah.
So, what's CrowdStrike going to do against that?
But it's the height of irony. You can't have it both ways. What these very intelligence officials persuaded everybody is that the Russians were behind this because it takes a state actor to do this kind of thing, and there's no pro state actor like the KGB, the GRU, the Russian, okay.
Yeah.
So these are real pros, right? And yet they leave behind these telltale signs like, oops, they forgot they left some Cyrillic in there, Russian alphabet. Oh, right. My God. And worse still, Felix Edmunovich appears somewhere in there. Now, who's Felix Edmunovich? Americans don't know that, but that's Dzerzhinsky, first head of the Cheka, which was the predecessor of the KGB. So somebody leaves it just in case.
They must have been working on it for a long time, huh?
Yeah, right. Yeah, working on it for 50 years. So in case you missed the Cyrillic, you say, who's Felix Edmunovich, So, it was pretty amateurish. Whoever on the CIA worked on that, should take early retirement before they come after
Just shy of a monogrammed handkerchief.
So, it would be funny if it weren't so damn serious, because they're getting away with it. And the irony is that these oversight committees in the House and Senate, well, for a long time they were called the oversight committees. Now they need to be called the overlook committees,
Right.
They don't oversee anything. The question about this latest, that the CIA had these capabilities, and in case anybody's not sure, I believe it's far more likely that John Brennan, the head of the CIA, was responsible for those Russian hacks than the Russians were. And I don't think that's a stretch of imagination. But there are lots of avenues to pursue here, and it's very, very important that the people who look at these intelligence overlookers realize that it's very embarrassing for them. Why? Nobody told them. Nobody told them. Did someone tell the president? I don't think so. Somebody ought to ask them. Somebody ought to ask those guys. But who's to ask them? They're running the investigation.
Right.
So it's terribly embarrassing. Now, there's a precedent here, Stuxnet, okay? That's a weird sort of operation. That was to buy off the Israelis so they wouldn't attack Iran and get us into a war. Buy off the Israelis? What year? 2009? But wasn't it in 2007 that the intelligence community found out that Iran was not working on a nuclear weapon? Well, yeah. Was that a kind of wishy-washy decision? No, it was unanimous. Moderate? No, high confidence.
Hmm.
Just some of the agencies? No, all 16. It was the most. It's the only intelligence estimate that I know of, and I know of a lot of them now, and I used to chair a couple, that played a huge role in preventing a war. The war that Bush and Cheney had planned for 2008. Okay, so that was on the record. Okay, it was reinforced and re-articulated every year by the head of national intelligence, and yet somebody said, well, we need to buy off the Israelis by destroying centrifuges in Iran by this Stuxnet. So cyber warfare started with the Stuxnet. Were the intelligence communities informed about that? No. Was the president? My guess would be no. But John Brennan pretty much had carte blanche, whether it was to fly drones to kill Americans or whatever. And the most interesting comment that's come out over the last couple of weeks is from the Senate Minority Leader, Senator Chuck Schumer, who's talking with Rachel Maddow.
Right.
And he says, I thought Trump was a really smart guy, but he's done something very foolish. And Rachel said, what's that? He says, well, he's taken on the CIA. Now, this is Schumer, okay? And the CIA has 6 ways to Sunday to get at you, okay? So, whereas I thought Trump was a reasonably bright guy, a really good businessman, I'm not so sure anymore because he's done something very foolish, end quote. Now, what does Rachel say? Well, if you were Rachel, if I were Rachel, I think I would have said, Senator Schumer, are you saying that the President of the United States should be afraid of the CIA? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
What she did say was, well, I guess we have to go to break now.
Right.
So all I'm saying is there's the minority head,
Right.
Senate, and he's saying, hey, look, you take on the CIA, they got 6 ways to Sunday. That's an old Bronx expression. I come from the Bronx. 6 ways to Sunday. That means 6 days of the week till Sunday to get at you, right?
Right.
So that was part and parcel of all this. They're afraid, and Trump's dilemma now is, now that it's known how all this went down, and specifically how he and his people were monitored, what's he going to do?
Right. And that brings us to the article that you co-authored with Bill Binney a few days ago. You called it The Surveillance State Behind Russiagate. And you point out that there's certainly more to this than upset Democrats who were complaining about their loss of an election that they thought was guaranteed to them. But that, as this Chuck Schumer quote indicates, there exists a deep state. I mean, there are intelligence agencies, there are people in these institutions that have an idea about what direction the United States policy ought to be. And if Trump doesn't see eye to eye on that, well, they've got ways of ensuring that he'll follow those directions or to unseat him from office. You wrote in this article that the choice on Trump's part of whether to take on these institutions or live in fear of them will determine whether there is a future for our constitutional republic. That's a very strong statement. Tell us more. Why do you say that?
Well, the only oath that I've ever taken is to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We have a Fourth Amendment. Okay, the Fourth Amendment forbids unreasonable searches and seizures without probable cause, with a warrant. So when Bill Binney, when Ed Snowden, when Thomas Drake and all these NSA folks saw that the Fourth Amendment was out the window, that because Dick Cheney told General Hayden to do this, he just went ahead and did it, that's really very serious. Now, that's preface. What's happened recently? Well, there was a woman who was a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. Her name is Farkas, I think. Yeah, it's Evelyn Farkas, okay? So she goes on Fox News, I think, and she says, I was worried that in the transition, that if we didn't take very close, careful protection of our very sensitive sources, then the Trump people would find out how it was that we monitored them and how it was that we found out what was going on in their conversations with the Russians, Flynn and so forth. So I was very worried that if they found out how we found out about them doing this, it would all go down really bad. She says that. Okay?
Right.
She says that a month ago. Oh, well, nobody picks up on that, until more recently it comes to light. And she's asked, well, how do you explain it? Well, you can't explain away these words. That she was worried that the very sensitive information gotten by very classified sources was responsible for them learning about what Trump was doing and what his associates were doing, and what happened to Michael Flynn,
Mm-hmm.
So if they learned about that, that would be bad, so we got to disguise it and take care of that, okay? Well, so not long after that, Trump says himself, oh my God, I was wiretapped by the Obama administration. Everybody says, oh, come on. No, he says by Obama himself. Now, Trump tends to exaggerate. Presidents shouldn't exaggerate. They should be precise. But Trump is Trump. That's not an excuse. It's just a reality.
Yeah.
So the president, I don't think so. I don't think Obama said, hey, you guys in NSA or CIA monitor these guys. They're quite capable of doing those things without any reference by saying, well, the president should have plausible denial here. I know he would want us to do this. Mm-hmm. So that's how a lot of this stuff's goes down. So what happens? Well, the press goes crazy. Oh my God, look, Trump is now saying he was wiretapped. Get the FBI in. So 10 days ago, James Comey comes in. We in the Federal Bureau of Investigation have looked very carefully at this, and the Department of Justice has as well, and they have authorized me to say that there's no evidence at all that Trump was wiretapped. How about you, Admiral, what's his name, Rogers, the guy from NSA? Oh no, we looked in all our files. There's no indication, not a scintilla of evidence that Trump was wiretapped. Got that? Wiretap. Okay. Now, I was telling some interview the other day, wiretapping went out with the Edsel Ford, for God's sake. The technology today, wiretapping hasn't been done, I don't want to exaggerate, for decades now, okay? So what he was talking about is surveillance. Now, was Trump and his associates surveilled in October, November, and December of last year? The answer is yes. Okay. Now, some patriot who took his oath to the Constitution seriously, thought that the House Intelligence Committee chair should know that.
Right.
Okay. And so what happened was, we know this little cloak and dagger stuff. Someone gave Congressman Nunes a call, and he went to a secure place where he could read specific documents. Now, what did those documents show? Well, Nunes has not told anybody, including his ranking member, but it's not rocket science that they showed that Trump and his associates were monitored, were surveilled, like Bevelin Farkas has said. Okay,
right.
So that's the denouement here. Okay, the latest, of course, is that the president of the White House has invited the chair and the ranking member of both the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee to come down to the White House and take a look at the documents. Okay? Whoa, that's interesting, isn't it? Now, those documents can't really be fledged or can't really be massaged to make them inauthentic. And what they'll show, in my view, is that the true names, like, people need to realize that when intercepted conversations come in, they come in raw form, unencrypted, not minimized, not masked.
Right.
True names, okay. Now, who gets that? The CIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the FBI, as well as NSA, which collects it, okay. So, somebody at those upper reaches decided, whoa, let's talk to the New York Times about this, because look, Flynn calling the Russian ambassador, all these stuff going on, all the contact, Manafort, and all, you know, so they leak all this stuff. Now, I don't know who leaked it, but I'd give you some initials, okay? John Brennan, okay, the head of the CIA. Now, there's lots of circumstantial evidence that he did that, and whether the president knew about it or not, John Brennan's done a lot of things the president didn't know about, and he's done a lot of things that he has. John Brennan had a hold on Obama, and I can prove it, okay? Now, so, what's another circumstantial thing here? Well, the Wall Street Journal was moaning and groaning 2 months ago. CIA never comes talk to us. They just talk to the New York Times and sometimes the Washington Post. How about us? How about the Wall Street Journal? They said that, okay? So nothing would happen to the CIA of this sensitivity without John Brennan knowing about it. I hold him responsible for this. So where does this bring us? This brings us to the denouement, okay? Number one, now that the chief and the ranking member of both these committees will be shown these documents, will the Congress be able to live up to its constitutional responsibility to investigate this in a nonpartisan way and come up with conclusions and hold people like John Brennan accountable? I don't know the answer to that, because even if they try, they may not succeed. And one little fly in the ointment here, or one little indicator, was just a couple days ago. Representative Nunes, the head of the House Intelligence Committee, wanted to interview James Comey and Admiral Rogers in secret. And he asked them. And they said no. Now, if I were president, I would say, Mr. Comey, you know, we have this separation of powers here, and we have oversight committees, and they've asked you to come and talk in secret. Do it. Now, Comey, I don't know what he'd do, quit, or he'd do it. See? So there's already this, what's the word? This obstinance, this dragging of feet. And it turns out that they wanted to interview Brennan and James Clapper right away, okay, before they were prepared, okay? So what's going on here is more than just a little kabuki dance. Nunes has his head screwed on right in a way that most House Intelligence Committee chairmen have never had, okay? What do I mean by that? He's not going to get Brennan and James Clapper in there until he knows what questions to ask them, okay? That's big, because Clapper has a record of perjury.
Right.
He lied to the Senate under oath about NSA collection, the same sort of thing, until 2 months later, Ed Snowden said, hey, here's what we're really doing, and Clapper had to go to wrote a letter. He says, you know, what I said was clearly incorrect. Sorry about that. That was 4 years ago.
Right.
Would you think that maybe the president would remove somebody who lied to the Senate? He didn't remove him, did he? Okay, that speaks volumes. The other thing I would cite, not many people know, what really disturbed me, the Senate Intelligence Committee report, 4 years in the making, very, very assiduous young people looking into what the CIA did in regard to torture and, you know, this kidnapping and so forth, relying exclusively on CIA documents, cables from the field to headquarters, memos, CIA documents. Now, how'd they get them? There was a little bargain between Panetta, when he was head of the CIA, and the Senate committee. So they had the wherewithal on them. And if people will remember, in December of 2014, the most heinous kinds of torture rectal hydration for no real reason, other things of terrible, terrible consequence were revealed. And worse still, it was revealed that John Brennan and the others were lying through their teeth when they said, yeah, this was bad, but it worked. It gave good intelligence out. It was shown from their cables themselves that it wasn't. So, why am I mentioning this? Well, Dianne Feinstein, to her credit, faced into this. Why? Well, she's not known for her courage, in my view, but she had these 4 or 5 young investigators. I think it was sort of a grandmotherly instinct, you know. She saw how hard they had worked, and she saw the heinous nature of what they uncovered. And so she pressed ahead, and there was a battle royale between Dianne Feinstein, using her constitutional prerogative, and John Brennan, head of the CIA. What did he do? He hacked into Dianne Feinstein's computers. Right.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, I didn't hack. And then later, like Clapper, he said, oh, well, yeah, we did hack. So what am I saying? Well, the chief investigator, his name is Daniel Jones, okay? He was interviewed by Ackerman, writing for the Spencer Ackerman, writing for the Guardian. He got 3 stories out of it. The middle story says that what really disturbed Daniel Jones, the prime investigator, was that although Dianne Feinstein had a very big supporter named Harry Reid, okay, minority leader in the Senate, John Brennan had a far more powerful supporter. His name was Barack Obama. And Barack Obama joined with John Brennan to prevent the publication of these the revelation of these heinous details about torture and the fact that torture didn't work, as John Brennan and others had said. He worked really hard to prevent that until right before there was a change in the leadership of the Senate committee. It went from majority Democrat to Republican. We got the guy Burr in there now, okay? So Dianne Feinstein was up against it. Time, it was running out. December, right? So she says, Harry Reid, we got to tell the president that this is going to happen. Harry calls the president, and the president says, no, we can't do this, national security reasons. And Reid says to him, Mr. President, I wish you could hear yourself, what you're saying. We're going to press forward. We came to the point, what Dianne Feinstein said to the president is, look, I have a member here, Mark Udall. He lost, okay? He lost his re-election. He's got nothing to lose now. And he feels really strongly about the need to get this executive summary of the torture report out. So, here's your choice. You let us release this in redacted form, it's okay, or Mark Udall reads it from the floor of the Senate. And only then did Obama say, oh, darn, okay, call up John Brennan. Well, we gotta release it. Now, what does that tell you? What does that tell you about the hold that John Brennan has over the president? These were CIA documents, things we need to know about what happened, what went down. We need to know that torture didn't work and that they were lying through their teeth. And yet Obama supported him through his friend Dennis McDonough, who came to every meeting. No, you can't release it. And so that's the only way we know the heinous nature of all these things. And so what I'm just saying is that Obama was told early on that he needed to realize that the deep state was around, and that he needed to trim his sails accordingly. And when I say early on, I mean as his campaign for president was just beginning. And I'll finish with this on this line. In May, Senator Obama said, there's this plan, there's this legislation to hold the giant telecoms harmless for snooping on all Americans, getting all the stuff. And I'm against it. That would be terrible. That's against the Fourth Amendment. In June, John Brennan joined Obama's campaign. We're talking 2008 now, okay, real early on, okay? 1st of July, if memory serves, 2008, Obama says, I think I changed my mind on that. I don't think we should I don't think we should blame or hold the giant telecoms accountable for. I think we should hold them harmless. And I'm saying to myself, whoa, hang on here. Bells go off here. Here's a guy that was against holding them harmless. I didn't put two and two together at the time, but I later learned that Brennan joined that campaign right in the middle of this. Then he changes his mind. So why would a senator running for president change his mind? Well, there are political reasons, but there are also reasons where Brennan obviously had a lot of influence in changing his mind and said, look, Mr. President, you got to play ball with NSA here. We can't take them on because they have 6 ways to Sunday to get back at you, you know? And that's the way it's been with Obama. And that's why Brennan was allowed to do all the stuff he's done in Syria, kill Americans with drones, all manner of other things, and get away with it. Now, Nunes, to his credit, is interested in preventing that kind of thing from happening in the past. And the last thing I'll say about Nunes is that I know him. I met him in 2009 in Visalia, California, in his office in the Central Valley of California. What was I doing there? He had a constituent. His name was Terry Harbadier. Who is this? He was a sailor. He was a sailor on the USS Liberty, a spy ship that the Israelis shot up, were going to sink and leave no survivors. The date was June 8th, 1967, in the midst of the short war they had out there. What did Terry do? Terry asked the captain, he says, Captain McGonigal, they've shot out all the antennae on our ship, but I know one antenna that had not been connected, so they didn't realize it could be made live. I think I can use some baling wire and this connector, I get that, and we can get it SOS out. And McGonigal says, Harbadier, there's napalm all over that deck. I'm not going to let you do that. He says, sir, I'd like to do that. I think we get an SOS out. I mean, everybody, 34 sailors were killed on USS Liberty, 171 wounded out of a crew of less than 300, okay? So he said, all right, if you think you'll do it. Harbadier goes out with spelling, connects the thing, they get an SOS out to the 6th Fleet. The Israelis intercept that SOS and get out of Dodge, okay? That's why it wasn't a massacre. That's why it was just a tragedy where, as I say, 34 sailors died, 171 were wounded. Now, that was covered up. I mean, that was covered up big time. Those sailors were told that if you tell anyone, including your wife, who attacked you, namely the Israelis, you'll be subject to court-martial. You sailors are not allowed to talk to one another about what happened. Now, you want to see PTSD big time. I've seen it among these sailors who were not allowed to do this for years and years. So, when Representative Nunes in the Central Valley of California realizes that he's got a hero constituent there, Terry Harbadier, who did this magnificent thing, he says, have you been recognized? And Harbadier says, we're not only not been recognized, we've been deep sixth, you know. They had a little ceremony, the Navy did, finding when they came around, for the captain, Captain McGonigal. It was a Medal of Honor, but it wasn't at the White House. It was on the stinking Anacostia River, where the Navy has a little small base here in Washington, okay? So that's, you know, and they asked, the State Department asked the Israeli embassy, would you have any objection to our giving a Medal of Honor to the Captain McGonigal?
Wow.
Yes, that's documented, okay? So that's how bad it was. So here's Nunes, he says, I'm gonna give him the Silver Star. He works for the Defense Department, and I hear about it, I'm right out there, I'm there. I flew out and drove all night. And it's incredible. There are survivors from the USS Liberty. And Harbadier says, you know, it's not right to keep these kinds of things concealed. This is the truth. People should be rewarded for this. And he pins the Silver Star on Terry Harbadier. Now I'm thinking, what other congressman or what other senator would take the risk of raising hackles with the lobby or the people who want to keep the whole thing down. Well, why did he do it? I think he did it because, well, it's always possible that he did it because it's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So, long story short, I think that's maybe a harbinger of things to come. I think Nunes wants to do the right thing. Whether he'll succeed or not is anybody's guess. All I can say is he's up against formidable opponents. Witness what the ranking member or the minority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, has said outright to Rachel Maddow.
Yeah. He puts the ranking in ranking, huh?
Yeah, you got it. Ranking.
Yeah, I think this really, the story that you've painted, the picture that you've painted, really gives us something that we need to do. Because if this is to be fought out only among the institutional layers, it's a tough fight. It's something where if people are aware, as we're able to make known to the population more generally that this is a fight, that this isn't about Democrats versus Republicans, that this is really much more about the deep state versus the potential of elected government to determine our course, that the threats of, say, blackmail via the FBI or other intelligence agencies, the dossiers that no doubt exist on these elected officials, that stands as a threat if people aren't aware of that being the MO. As people are, I think, more familiar with the way the FBI targeted Martin Luther King. Urged him on more than one occasion to commit suicide to prevent these kinds of documents from getting out. But I think it really means that there's something for all of us to do in terms of making sure that this is known, making sure that the terms of the fight here are known to make it possible to win this one.
Exactly, and those were wiretaps.
Yeah, right.
Back in the late 50s, early 60s, those were real wiretaps, and you're quite right. That was heinous. I asked Colleen Rowley, who's, as I say, the expertise that we have available to us in veteran intelligence professionals for sanity won't quit. Colleen was the counsel of the Minneapolis division of the FBI. She was the one that wrote memos to the director saying, this is how we screwed up on 9/11. She's got guts that won't quit as well. I said, Colleen, Robert Kennedy, my God, Robert Kennedy, Attorney General, authorizing the FBI to try to persuade Dr. King to commit suicide? How do you figure that, Colleen? And she said, Ray, wiretapping, J. Edgar Hoover, Robert Kennedy would know. J. Edgar Hoover has lots of information about all those pretty girls that he and Jack used to invite to the White House pool and all those stuff. And she's imagining this, but the reality is that Robert Kennedy would know that J. Edgar Hoover had lots of material to blackmail not only him but his big brother. Okay, that's big, and that's why when all this came out in the mid-70s, they created these laws and created these oversight committees, which for a while did their job. Now they're hopelessly unable, unwilling. They don't want to know this stuff, and they don't know it for the matter. And the intelligence officials say, well, they don't want to know this, so why should we tell them? As for citizens, I would emphasize that this whole business about, let's take when Edward Snowden came out with his revelations in June of 2013. What happened? Well, people say, well, isn't this interesting? Everything. They intercept everything. Emails, telephone. Wow. Luckily, I have nothing to hide, So we asked a fellow from the Stasi, okay? Stasi is the old East German Secret Service, right? And he was, if people have seen Das Leben der Anderen, The Lives of Others,
Right.
Academy Award film, terrific film about East Germany and the Stasi, okay? Stasi was their KGB. Well, you get a picture of what they did, okay? So Wolfgang Schmidt, his real name, by the way, a Stasi colonel, is interviewed. And one of the Americans says, now, Wolfgang, what do you think about people in America who say they have nothing to hide, And Schmidt says this, this is incredibly naive. Everyone has something to hide. You don't get to decide what they get on you. The only way to prevent it from being used against you is to prevent it from being collected in the first place. I mean, beautiful, you know? If they collect it,
Right.
they can use it.
Right.
They don't read it all, they don't listen to it all, but they put it in these little files, and they're not files, but they're, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of us, you know, what Edward Snowden said about turnkey tyranny, if you have these kinds of information, private information about everyone, including the president and Michael Flynn and all his associates, you know, back in October, November, and December, well, you have the ability, if not to win the election, then to at least destroy or make these folks seem beholden to the Russians of all places, and disarm the attempts that Trump wants to make vis-a-vis Russia. Now, I have to tell you that I am against everything Trump stands for internally. I think he's not only unqualified to be president, but all his instincts are terrible. Okay, so put that on the record. I think I already said I voted for Jill Stein. Now, that said, even a broken clock, you know, it's right. Well, how many times a day?
Twice a day.
Okay,
Yeah.
now, he's right about Russia. If he were to say to Vladimir Putin, look, I don't think we need to put more troops in the Baltic states or Poland, so why don't I pull out those troops and you pull out the troops on the other side? Is it a deal? I'm morally certain Putin says a deal. Now, what would that mean? That would mean that what Pope Francis, to his credit, called the blood-drenched arms traders would lose out big time. Peace, bad for business. Tension, very good for business. So there's a lot at stake among very, very powerful people. And if Trump can make this stick, this is not a puny little incidental issue. It's a transcendent one. You know, I was more afraid that Hillary would bring us to a nuclear confrontation than Putin. I didn't like, Putin than Trump. And I didn't like Trump on the environment because I have 9 grandchildren. Don't senators and congressmen have grandchildren? Don't they give? So for me it was a choice between pest and cholera. But here we have a possibility for a new, what the Germans call Ostpolitik, a new policy looking to the east. And take my word for it. I've looked at what the Russians have done. I looked at the heyday of the relationship with the United States and Russia, which goes back to October of 2013, when Putin pulled Obama's chestnuts out of the fire by persuading the Syrians to destroy or have destroyed all their chemical weapons on U.S. ships, okay? Nobody knows about that, the United States. But the neocons, the people who want to create a bad atmosphere in relations between the United States and Russia, they know about it. It only took them 6 months. 6 months to mount a coup on Russia's doorstep in Kiev, in Ukraine. And that's where all this trouble started. Russians accused of invading Ukraine, not true. Of invading Crimea, not true, you know. So all that stuff was artificially pumped up. It's just as easily deflated. And Trump, if he's willing to do that, well, that would be a biggie. So, you know, being right 2 times a day is better than never being right.
Well put.
I think.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Ray. I think this
You're most welcome. Thanks for asking. It's very rare that I get a chance to review what I've observed, and it's just a pity that we're kind of barred from what's called the mainstream media.
Well, we've got our own job to do.
Thanks.
Thank you.